1/3 of people in the United States and in Europe don't even have $1,000 in the bank. And if you search elsewhere in the world, it's probably worse. Yet, most of them wake up early, commute, answer emails, do hard labor, deal with pressure, and repeat the same routine week after week as a full-time job. So why in the world do so many people financially struggle? In this video, we'll try to figure out if most jobs actually pay enough for people to survive. And if the answer is yes, the problem might simply be financial management. We'll first look at what being paid enough actually mean. Then, what are the jobs that most people do? And finally, do these jobs pay you enough to survive on your own? All right, let's get into it. So, part 1, how much do you need to be paid enough? For the sake of simplicity in this video, when we speak about being paid enough, we're talking about being paid enough to live alone, to cover essential needs, and to do so without constant financial anxiety. Not thriving, not getting rich, just functioning independently. So what does that actually cost in the real world? Let's talk about averages, because averages matter when we're asking whether most jobs work for most people. Across the US and much of Western Europe, a single adult living alone faces the same core expenses. We're talking about rent, groceries, transportation, healthcare, utilities, and basic connectivity like a phone and internet. These aren't optional expenses. They're the minimum requirements to participate in our modern societies. Housing is the biggest one. In the US, the median rent for a modest one-bedroom apartment has climbed dramatically over the past decade, especially in cities where most jobs actually are. And even outside of major metropolitan areas, it's now very common for rent alone to land somewhere between $1,300 to $1,800 a month. And that's before utilities, insurance, or maintenance. In parts of Western Europe, rent may be slightly lower in some regions, but higher taxes and energy costs often offset that difference. Either way, housing alone now eats up a massive portion of a single person's income. Then there's food. Not dining out every night, not fancy groceries, just normal, boring food. When you add up groceries for a single adult, plus the occasional unavoidable convenience meal, you're easily looking at $400 to $700 per month, depending on your location. Transportation is another major cost, whether that's car payments, insurance, fuel and maintenance, or public transit passes. Healthcare is a particularly heavy burden in the US, where even employer-sponsored plans still leave many people paying hundreds of dollars per month in premiums, deductibles, and out-of-pocket costs. When you put all of this together, the picture becomes pretty clear. On average, a single adult living alone needs somewhere around $2,800 to $3,500 per month just to cover basic essentials. And again, that's not luxury, that's not savings, that's not emergencies, that's simply existing without falling behind. To make the math simple and conservative, let's call it $3,000 per month after taxes. That's the number we're working with. If a job can't reliably get you there, it doesn't meet the definition of we're paid enough for you to live independently in most places. Of course, you can find areas or places to live cheaper than that, but again, we're talking averages here. Let's move to the second part. What kind of jobs do most people have? Because when people talk about wages, careers, or good jobs, there's often a huge disconnect between perception and reality. Online, it can feel like everyone works in tech, finance, or some high-paying creative role. But that's not even close to how the labor market is structured. In reality, most jobs fall into a handful of broad categories. A very large share of the workforce is employed in service roles: retail, food service, hospitality, customer support, and personal care. These jobs exist everywhere, they're essential to daily life, and they employ millions of people. On top of that, a significant portion of workers are in administrative and support roles, handling scheduling, paperwork, coordination, and basic office operations that keep organizations running. Another large chunk of the workforce is in trades, logistics, construction, manufacturing, and transportation. These are physically demanding jobs that keep infrastructure functioning and goods moving. Then there's healthcare and caregiving, which employs millions more and continues to grow as populations age. Education is another major sector, though smaller than many people expect, employing teachers, instructors, and support staff. What's important to understand is that high-paying professional roles like software engineers, lawyers, doctors, and senior managers make up a relatively small slice of the workforce. They're highly visible, highly discussed, and heavily represented online, but they are not the norm. The majority of people work in jobs that are essential, repetitive, and often undervalued, even though society would immediately notice if they disappeared. So when we ask whether most jobs pay enough, we're not talking about edge cases or elite careers. We're talking about the jobs that make up the backbone of the economy, the jobs most people actually do. Now, part 3. Do most of these jobs actually pay enough? Now we can finally connect the dots. We know roughly how much it costs to live alone. We know what kinds of jobs most people have. So the only question left is how much those jobs actually pay. In the US, the median full-time worker earns the equivalent of roughly $60,000 to $62,000 per year before taxes. After taxes, that usually translates to somewhere around $3,000 to $3,400 per month, depending on the state and benefits. That immediately tells us something important. If the typical cost of basic living is around $3,000 per month, and the median worker takes home roughly that amount, then for the average person there is almost no margin for error. Rent goes up, groceries increase, healthcare costs spike, and suddenly the math stops working. And that's for the middle of the income distribution. Millions of workers earn significantly less than those numbers. This is why so many people don't feel like they're failing, but still feel like they're stuck. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just operating in a system where the numbers barely line up anymore. And when they don't line up, people adapt in predictable ways. One of the most common adaptations is shared living. Living with roommates well into adulthood is no longer a temporary phase. It's a long-term strategy. Dual-income households have gone from optional to necessary. Living with parents, especially among younger adults, has reached levels not seen in decades. This isn't about laziness or entitlement. It's about math. Debt fills the gaps as well. Credit cards, buy now, pay later plans, and personal loans become tools to smooth over mismatches between income and expenses. Savings get postponed. Retirement contributions get delayed. Healthcare gets avoided unless absolutely necessary. Over time, this creates a population that is technically employed, but financially fragile. So when we ask whether most jobs pay enough anymore, the honest answer is no. Most jobs pay enough to survive collectively, not independently. They assume shared housing, shared income, or external support. The idea that a single full-time job should reliably support a single adult living alone has quietly faded, even though we still pretend it exists. This reality explains a lot of modern frustration. It explains why so many people feel burned out even when they are doing fine on paper. It explains why career dissatisfaction is widespread, even among people who don't hate their actual work. And it explains why conversations about wages, housing, and cost of living feel so emotionally charged. People aren't imagining the pressure, but they're actually living it. If this video made you think differently about work, money, or independence, you're not alone. And if you want to go deeper into how people adapt, what careers still work, or what this means long-term, click one of the videos on your screen right now.